Hello, my name is Garth McGill, and in this video we're going to talk about making the small pneumatics that are the real workhorses of a player piano. This particular action is shown from the back side and shows all the freshly made small pneumatics on the bottom rows, the bottom two rows, and the hoses are completed as well as the rebuilds on the tracker and the wind motor shown on the left side. During our early stages of rebuilds, we used a black rubberized material with hot glue, and we later switched to a different material which we're going to demonstrate later in this video. We use 1/4-inch mahogany ply with either a particle core or a bias ply core. Either one is fine. Both types of ply take glue well, is airtight, and will not warp. Determine the size of the new boards needed for the small pneumatics and start cutting them out and sizing them exactly the same as the originals. Chamfer the sides of the holes to make sure that no wood particles can ever fall into or within the pneumatic itself and plug the small bleeds at some point down the road. This would be disastrous. Gang sand the pneumatic boards to ensure that they match exactly, and from this point on you keep them in sets. Make about 10 extra sets to allow for culling and any mistakes that are made later on. This is the beginning of the process of starting to put the match sets together. It begins with the addition of the hinge, which is heavy cotton. We used pillow ticking because it has lines in it and facilitates the cutting out. You can keep your lines straight with the using the lines from the ticking. The material should be cut about 3/16 of an inch narrower than the board, folded over a piece of wax paper, and then ironed to create a permanent crease in the material. Notice the red arrows pointing out the small bevel cut on the inside of the pneumatic board. This allows the pneumatic to open and close without any restraint. After the glue sets, make sure the wax paper is removed before proceeding any further. Working quickly, apply hot glue to each side of the board, place the hinge in position, and spring clamp until the glue sets. Okay, let's get started with the tricky part of making pneumatics. I previously talked a little bit about the material used for the pneumatic cloth, and you can see in this picture that it's commercially available material. It's called domestic nylon pneumatic cloth. It's available in 1 3/8 inch wide roll, and it's not very thick, 4/1000 of an inch. And it's coated with polyurethane, and it's very durable. We've used it for some time and found it to stand up very well, resist creasing and cracking at the folds, and seems to be standing up after quite a few years of use. This slide shows the jig I made for helping to make consistent pneumatics. It's simply a board with a taper, and it shows the metal jig in the center of it that spaces the distance between the openings so that they remain consistent throughout your whole set. There's masking tape just simply put on it temporarily to give you the length required to cut the roll as it's coming off. I've got the roll mounted on a little spindle on the top so that it quickly just rolls off. After one is made, it's just pulled through and down to the bottom masking tape and then cut across the top. It should also be mentioned here that the spread of the pneumatic boards has to be the same as the original ones that were on the original action, so it's very important to pre-measure those before taking them off and record it on a piece of paper or something so that you can make sure it's exactly the same. The pneumatic is brought forward and laid down on the board up against a block on the bottom of the jig, and after spreading glue carefully on the sides with a finger, the material is pulled taut as my finger is showing at the end. experience will dictate how much glue to put on the board before putting the material tight, and for the first several, one should flip the pneumatic over and look on the inside to see if there's a lot of glue oozing on the inside, which is something that you don't want. You want enough glue to get a good bond, but not excessive that oozes in on the inside, because if it does, it creates what's called a glue-bound pneumatic, and it just doesn't work and won't work properly after putting it together. After gluing the opposite side, you're now ready to trim the edges with a pair of scissors that have got to be sharp, and it's a good idea to get a pair sharp and fresh before you start cutting these pneumatics out, because it makes life an awful lot easier if you have a real sharp set. Trim along the side using the side of the scissors as shown, and at the end or the hinge end flare the cutout so as there's extra material to allow for the overlap on the hinge. Making the fold on the pneumatic can be a little bit tricky until you get the hang of it. The best way is to hold it in the palm of your hand with one hand and press in the sides with your thumb and forefinger, while holding in with the index finger on the other hand, pressing in the crease or pressing in the middle to create a crease, and push the pneumatic together in such a manner as to not have any of the fold protruding out past the end. I would often use a little small 1-inch sponge brush as a glue applicator, so that you don't get glue on your fingers, and keeps your hands clean so that you don't have to keep constantly wiping them off. It is important in the final stages to hold the pneumatic in the closed position with your forefingers while applying the glue to put the fishtails, as I call them, together. The bottom fishtail is overlapped over the one on the top as shown, and trimmed on the side, and then the ends are trimmed. This shot with the red arrow shows the cavity that's created by the two bevels that were put on the bottom of the boards. I generally cut them about 1 inch to 1.5 inches on the bottom portion only, so that there's room for the material to fold inward, and if there is any glue ooze, it accommodates it so that it doesn't create a glue-bound pneumatic. I too fell victim to failing to test units properly, the pneumatics having leaks or being glue-bound, or any number of reasons for not having done proper testing, and later on having to tear down whole actions to find the problem. I bought a little inexpensive stethoscope, removed the end, and put a piece of lead tubing on the end so I could pick up the smallest of leaks. I made a small testing block which had suction on it that I could place the pneumatic on it on a piece of suede leather to make sure I got a seal, and then listening with the stethoscope to see if there was any leaks around the outside edges. Could also check and see if the pneumatic closed freely and opened freely using the same apparatus. These small pneumatics form the foundation of a well-built player action that will perform as good as or better than the original. It's a painstaking process. My first set about 30 hours worth, and after 5 or 6 rebuilds got to the 12 to 15 hour mark. I cannot underestimate the need of testing when it involves making these 80 some odd pneumatics. Failing to test can result in just about as many hours to find the problem with the small pneumatics as building them in the first place. Food for thought. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.